Some criminal cases gain attention because of their brutality, others because of their mystery. But occasionally, a case becomes known for an unsettling coincidence. This is one of those cases. The name is Wade Wilson, a name many associate with a fictional anti-hero. But this story has nothing to do with comics or cinema. This is the true story of a real man, real victims, and a crime that left an entire community in shock. Wade Stephen Wilson was born in the United States and spent much of his adult life in and out of the criminal justice system. Long before the murders that would define his name, Wilson already had a record that included theft, burglary, and repeated encounters with law enforcement. Friends and family later described a pattern of instability, impulsive behavior, and escalating violence. By 2019, Wilson was no stranger to jail cells or courtrooms. What no one could have predicted was how far his actions would soon go. On October 7, 2019, the city of Cape Coral, Florida, would witness a tragic and violent day. Wade Wilson, a man with a long criminal history, carried out two deliberate acts that would change the lives of families forever. While the details are difficult to hear, the focus here is on understanding the events in a factual and professional way. Wilson encountered his first victim inside her home. Investigators later confirmed that this act was planned, and deliberate court documents described his behavior before and after the incident as calm, controlled, and emotionless. He took actions that indicated he understood the consequences of his choices, yet continued regardless. This first act set the tone for what would follow. Later that day, hours later, Wilson encountered a second woman. She was unaware of what had already happened and agreed to assist him once again. Investigators described Wilson's actions as intentional and controlled. The court emphasized that these were separate, deliberate incidents, demonstrating the premeditated nature of his behavior. Throughout both events, Wilson showed no remorse, no hesitation, and no panic, characteristics that would later be critical in court. Law enforcement pieced together the timeline, using witness statements, surveillance footage, and other evidence. Experts noted that Wilson's calm demeanor and deliberate choices marked him as highly controlled and aware of his actions in court. Prosecutors highlighted that his lack of emotional response, combined with repeated deliberate acts, justified charges of first-degree murder for both victims, while the precise details of the acts themselves are withheld out of respect for the victims. The story is clear: Wade Wilson's actions were planned, deliberate, and executed with full awareness of their consequences. These crimes shocked the community and led to one of the most serious legal outcomes: a death sentence in 2024 for the victims' families. In the public disgrace is a reminder of the reality behind the headlines: the loss of life, the permanence of consequences, and the responsibility of justice. Hours later, Wilson met a second woman, 43-year-old Diane Ruiz. She agreed to give him a ride. She did not know his past. She did not know what had already happened that day. According to prosecutors, Wilson attacked and strangled her as well. The violence did not stop there. Evidence presented in court showed that, after killing Ruiz, Wilson drove over her body with the stolen vehicle. The prosecution would later describe the act as deliberate and calculated, not accidental and not driven by panic. Police arrested Wade Wilson shortly after the second killing. During questioning, investigators began piecing together the timeline of events. Surveillance footage, witness statements, phone data, and physical evidence quickly connected Wilson to both murders. As the investigation deepened, authorities uncovered Wilson's extensive criminal history. What emerged was a portrait of a man with a long pattern of lawlessness, who escalated from property crimes to acts of extreme violence. When the case became public, national media attention followed. Much of that attention focused on Wilson's name, which matched the Marvel character known as Deadpool. Prosecutors and families of the victims repeatedly emphasized one thing: this was not entertainment. Two women had lost their lives. Two families were permanently changed. The name, they said, should never distract from the reality of the crimes. Wade Wilson's trial took several years to reach completion. Prosecutors charged him with 2 counts of first-degree murder in court. The state argued that Wilson acted with clear intent. They pointed to the timeline, the repeated acts of violence in his behavior after the murders as proof of premeditation. The defense attempted to argue mental instability and asked the jury to consider life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. Court documents describe Wilson as lacking empathy, showing impulsivity and having a complete disregard for the consequences of his actions. He showed no remorse, no regret, a factor that weighed heavily during the trial. The prosecution emphasized that these crimes were premeditated and not acts of chance or panic. In 2020, after reviewing all evidence and testimony, the jury reached its verdict. Wade Wilson was found guilty on both counts of first-degree murder. The decision moved the trial into its final phase. Sentencing. During the penalty phase, jurors were asked to weigh aggravating and mitigating factors. They heard emotional statements from the victims' families. They reviewed Wilson's criminal history. Ultimately, the jury recommended the death penalty. The judge accepted that recommendation. Wade Wilson was formally sentenced to death. Under Florida law today, Wade Wilson remains on death row in a Florida correctional institution. Like all death row inmates, his case may go through years of appeals, but the verdict itself is final. The justice system has determined his guilt and his punishment. The Wade Wilson case stands as a reminder of how quickly violence can escalate. When warning signs are ignored, it also highlights the responsibility of media to focus not on sensational details, but on truth, accountability in the lives that were lost. Behind every headline, there are victims whose stories deserve to be remembered. Wade Wilson was not a character from a comic book. He was a real person living in the real world, who made choices with irreversible consequences. His actions, deliberate and premeditated, brought tragedy to families and left a lasting mark on an entire community. The story of Wade Wilson is not about notoriety or coincidence. It is about the devastating effects of violence, the irreversible consequences of poor choices, and the reality that every action carries weight. For the victims' families, there is no closure that can fully heal the wounds. For the community, It is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of accountability. While some may remember the coincidence of his name, the real story lies in the lives affected, the lives lost in the unwavering responsibility of the justice system to respond. Wade Wilson's life ended not in fiction, but in the stark reality of crime, punishment, and the human cost of his decisions. And for all of us who witnessed this story, it is a reminder that no name, number, fame, and no circumstance can shield anyone from the consequences of their actions. This was real. This was tragedy. And this is the story of accountability. Justice and remembrance.